What's going on, Rip City? Super special episode we got going on here. We've been hinting at our special guest that we're going to be having here, and we're super honored. We're super excited to have her here. If you are a Blazer fan, you know who she is. It's the one, it's the only, Brooke Olzendam. Thank you, first of all, for joining us. How are you doing, Brooke?
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for asking me. You know, it's nice in the summertime, especially when is it summer yet? I think we just hit the first day of summer. Actually, yesterday, it kind of felt like it was lovely yesterday.
Yes.
But my point is, in the summertime, things are not even opposite of what it is during the season. Very, kind of slower, relaxed, slow pace. I don't do a ton, as like I said, opposite of during the season when things are go, go, go. So it's nice to have little things like this to, connect with you guys and the fans and just keep it moving during the summer to, stay fresh and keep talking about the team that I cover so that when it starts back up, it feels like an easy transition. So I love doing stuff like this, but yeah, I'm great. We started doing some workouts with the guys, the prospects coming in. So that's been kind of fun just to be able to get back in the practice facility, see everybody who we haven't seen anyone since the season ended. So that's been great. And then just kind of you get excited for the draft, that's kind of a new thing, especially for me, at least for my time here in Portland. Like this is, like I mentioned to you before we started, my 6th season, we just finished. So the draft hasn't always been the biggest deal because we've done so well in the postseason. So it's a different sort of postseason for me and the team, but I will say too, it's really exciting and I can't wait to see what happens. And the next season, I couldn't be more pumped for. So I'm great. Thanks for asking.
Good. Yeah, no, you're spot on. It's been a very strange season and it feels like such a long postseason just because we have really nothing to do with it.
Right.
But I wanted to ask you a couple questions real quick. I know in your last podcast, you talked about visiting your grandmother, I believe.
Yes.
In Seattle. How was Seattle? How was that?
It's great. So my dad lives there in Leschi, which is, if you're not familiar with Seattle, it's really cool. It's on the water and you go through Rainier Valley to get there. And he's got this condo. He's the oldest guy there. I mean, it's a bunch of 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds. He's kind of like the mayor of this condo. It's right on the water, which he needs to be close to the water. So I love visiting him there. He comes down and visits a lot too. And his mother, my grandmother, who will turn 94 this next month, has this little assisted living home up in Everett, and she just loves it. Her roommate is 101. Thelma, yes. Ooh. And Thelma gets up every morning, puts on head to toe, like the most darling clothes, puts on her pearls. Like she just doesn't need a walker even. It's amazing. So my grandma Dolores, who was I love her more than anything, went up and visited her, and we always go out to lunch, and she's always like, why is the food taking so long? I'm like, I'll ask grandma. But it's the same thing every time we go out. So it's cute. I wish I got to see her more. So during the season, it's kind of like one of those things where my friends and family, they kind of realize, okay, she'll get back to me when she can. I missed a ton of, birthdays, weddings, as do the players and coaches. It's just part of, when you're in the traveling team, it's just, comes with the gig. So it's when I really take my summers pretty seriously in terms of seeing as many of my friends and family as I can. So first on my list is always my grandma up in Everett. So yes, thanks for asking. She's doing great. She actually gets Root Sports this year.
There we go.
Yeah. So she gets to watch because she would be so angry before when she's like, I just don't know why I can't get it. And we try. And, as angry as a 94-year-old little 4'11" gal gets, but she gets to watch it. And she's a huge sports fan. She loves her Mariners, loves her Seahawks, and now loves her Blazers. So it was great. It was a great visit.
Yeah, family is extremely important. So anytime you get a chance to see them, you have to do that. One other thing I wanted to ask you is I also heard on your podcast you had a little thumb issue and you had to have there we go. There it is. How's it doing?
Well, it's good. It's been quite a journey for me. This happened last summer. If you heard the podcast, it's the most mortifying, embarrassing story. It started with a butterfly. I was laying on the dock in my parents' cabin. I freaked out. I rolled over. I heard something pop. I told my girlfriends, I think I did something. They thought I was overreacting because I have a tendency to do that. And it turns out halfway through the season, like I couldn't write. I'm like, this is not normal. Like this shouldn't be, like, it's been long enough. This should be healed. So I could write, but it was a little painful. And then when I went back to look at my notes, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what that word is. I have no idea what I wrote. So I went in and got an MRI, and the doctor was like, yeah, you have it's called, I always say, right, aversion. whatever. I tore my tendon off and it pulled a piece of bone with it.
Oh,
so
geez.
yeah, I have a tore tendon with a little piece of bone hanging. And the surgeon was like, you have to get this surgery like this week. I go, I can't, I have at least 3 more months of the season. And he's like, well, I guess we'll take a risk. Cause he was like, he realized, he's a big basketball fan. He's like, oh, okay, I get it. You have to hold my phone. I get it. He's like, that's fine. We'll wait till the end, but there's just a little bit of a concern that you might, kind of tear it even more and we won't be able to reattach it. And we'll have to take a part out of your wrist to do it, which kind of made me dry heave a little bit. I'm like, out of my wrist? What?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. But anyways, I got through the season, figured out how to read my own writing. And then right after the season was over, got the surgery, and they put this god awful like splint and then this gauze, like it looked like a mummy on Halloween that someone who couldn't think of another costume and just started wrapping themselves in it. So that's what my arm looked like. So thank goodness 2 days ago I got the actual cast on. And so I still feel like a 12-year-old boy, like broke his arm falling off a swing, but what are you going to do? I have to wear it for a month and I'm just going to I just wanted to get it done before it got really nice out,
Exactly.
Before like it's summertime.
Get that tan line. You want that tan
line. Yeah. So anyways, I got to get through it. I've never broken a bone before and I've never done anything like this before. So it's been an experience. My parents have been awesome. My dad came down for a while. My mom's here now, back to the whole family thing. So I'm getting very well taken care of.
Good. Yeah. One other question before we kind of jump into it. One of my favorite things that you do is like the player interviews, like during the timeouts and stuff. And for me, at least, my favorite is when you did like they had to wear the headphones and you read my lips. Yeah. Without a doubt, that's my favorite thing. And I love watching them. Is there one that you like overly enjoy more than the others?
So, well, it's going to be the blast from the past. So Zach Collins took it so seriously. Like, like Dame kind of is laughing, making fun of me. Nurk is like, I don't know what you're saying. Like he's just like, Nurk's kind of like rolling his eyes at the whole thing, but still like engaging, like Nurk does.
Yeah.
Like pretends like he's over it, but he still wants to, wants to win. But Zach was so into it. I mean, there was one video, we have so many of them, but there was one where he was leaning in, like, I swear, like we were like started like 10 feet apart. And as I kept doing it, I was leaning, he was leaning in, and all of a sudden we were like 5 feet apart, and he's looking at me with, how he has those eyes, like dagger eyes. Remember when he was mad on the bench that one time, yep. CJ was rubbing his back and all this Zen stuff. He looked just like that. And he was like, and like breathing heavily and was trying so hard to say it. And he made up some random, I can't even remember what it was, but it was like, schmurgish foggish. I was like, well, it was blah, blah, blah. He's like, what am I talking about? And then I got mad at himself for making up a word. It was priceless because he's so competitive, Zach is. And so he takes that competitive side that you see on the floor to like a game, like say what. And it was just, it took all of me to not just bust out laughing, because that you would have thought it was like the spelling bee championship of the world. And if he got this right, he was going to win like $200,000. Well,
I mean, hey, they're competitors for a reason, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I love those, and they're so enjoyable. And I know I didn't really say it, but without a doubt, out of all the like sportscasters that we've had and other teams that I'm fans of, without a doubt, you are my favorite. And I think it's probably unanimous. There's not many people that would disagree with that. The amount of people, when we finally got to announce that you were doing it, they were so excited, and they were just throwing out so many questions for us to ask you. So
good.
You are loved, and we love you, and you just keep going.
I appreciate that. And just so you know, and I hope I say it enough, but I love you guys. I mean, the fan base, and I brag about them all. I wanted to say us. I brag about us all the time to other people. Like I had this trip I went on a while ago. I think it was my second year with a bunch of other sideline reporters around the NBA. Our friends of mine. It's really cool. We're all like we're cool with each other. We really support each other, and we're true friends. And we went to Mexico like 4 or 5 years ago, and we're just like chilling in the pool, talking about, our jobs. And we were going around like fan base, and everyone's kind of going around telling like their roughest story with dealing with fans on Twitter, or like things that were said. And it got to me, I was like, my fan base and I really like each other. Like, I don't have any stories. And they're like, you haven't gotten into, I was like, no, like one time I went, like, I could think of one thing, and it wasn't even that bad. I was like, one time I laughed at a Jamal Crawford interview on like Jay Leno, and a couple people DM me. They're like, just so you know, a lot of the fan base is not a fan of Jamal Crawford's. And that was like the only thing I can remember. I was like, well, I just thought it was funny. I mean, so to just reiterate, I think our fan base is the greatest. I say it all the time. I'm not being biased. I mean, I talk like Charles Barkley, I've talked about it. He says, Blazers are the best fan base in the NBA. And so it's well known around the league. And for me, it's just been such a great fit. Like I've worked for another team. I've worked for, in different sports. I've worked for networks. I've done pretty much everything in all realms. And working for a team is such a special thing in general. But then when you have such a connection with the fan base and like yin yang, you like get each other, like you guys get me. I'm pretty unorthodox in kind of how I do things. It's not by the book. And that's kind of how our fan base is, So it's just been, it's one of those like once in a lifetime things where it's a great fit. And I feel so lucky to, be close to home, be in my neck of the woods. And then not only that, but just such a part of this organization in terms of the people that I work with and the fans and the team and the coaches. It's just been the word synergy is thrown around a lot, but that's just really how I feel. And our Blazers broadcasting group with my producer, director, Kevin, Lamar, all the guys in the truck, Nick, our pregame producer, Michael Holden, like we all just really like each other. And when you have a group of people that you work together every day and you like each other, you enjoy it, that can only enhance the product. Exactly. And not to mention, the other not the outliers, but the outskirts, then you got people in sales and sponsorship that I don't work as closely with, but we still work with them. Same deal. And then you got a great, leader in Dame and, great coaching staff this year. And it's just been wonderful. And I thank the fan base for many reasons, one for just, letting me in and giving me a chance and then, really forming a relationship with me. And I know more, it's funny. Like if I don't, like when people walk up and they're like, hi, Brooke, I'm like, I know. And they'll say their Twitter name. I was like, oh, there we go. Like I know a lot of people's Twitter names just because of that. And then I see them in real life. I'm like, okay, I'm so glad I put a face to a Twitter handle.
Exactly.
You guys are great. I love you.
So I wanted to ask you, like, how did you get into sportscasting? Like, what was your first, like, what led you to want to do that?
Well, my dad was a high school boys basketball coach when I was growing up in Medical Lake, which is right outside Spokane, which is where I grew up. And so like my mom, my whole family went to every single one of his games. And that was back when he started out in B and then went to Class A. And what that means in a small town like that, as you probably know, you're driving an hour and a half to Chewelah, to Deer Park, to Colfax, so your away games are, a bit of a trek. And so it's a, dedication. And we went to all of them. We went to every single one away. Unless there was some other family thing we had to do, every single home game. And so it was just kind of our way of life. Was basketball is what we did. And so I played growing up. My mom will tell you I was the only girl on the boys basketball team many years. The only way I'd get the ball is if I rebounded because they would never pass to me. So I got a little bit better at rebounding because of that. And then I played in elementary, junior high, played in high school. Wasn't good enough to play in college by any means, but I just enjoyed it. And that was just something that came easy to me. I loved the aspect of sports. Volleyball I was probably better at volleyball, but I really love basketball. And that was like my passion growing up. My dad and I watched every NBA game together. My girlfriends, I say this a lot, had like posters of like boy bands. I had like David Robinson, Gary Payton, Clyde Drexler, like all those around. I just I was the tomboy of my friends, but I always knew I wanted to do something in sports. I wasn't exactly sure what. I always knew I was going to go to Washington State. It's a family tradition. And I grew up going to the football games when they were home, Cougar football Saturday. So it was just, I always knew I wanted to be a Coug. So I was the only school I applied to. And I knew they had a great communication school, very good, but I still wasn't entirely sure how sports would integrate into that until I got in there. And Murrell School of Communications, Edward R. Murrell, they do such an amazing job where when I realized that this is something I could do, I'm like, well, I got to really delve into this, because you could, your sophomore year, actually your freshman year, you could actually try to be on Cable 8 was our news station, or just our channel. You could do a bunch of different shows. So you could pitch shows to Cable 8 and they would put them on air, and it was our student channel. So I was doing an extreme sports entertainment show my sophomore year. I was doing an SNL type show, a late night show, everything I possibly could just to kind of get in front of the camera and get a feel for that. And then as you got further in your education with Murrow, they put you out doing like you do weather one night, you produce a newscast one night, you would direct it, you do every aspect of the newscast to see what felt right. I did weather one night, bust. I'm like, it's gonna be cold, snow, white snow everywhere. You're gonna slip. Like that was about it. And then I'd do, like hard news, and it was kind of a bummer, but it was fine. And then I went and did my first men's basketball game, came back after the game to do, the highlights, like a normal newscast, because it was student run, and did the highlights, and then, showed my interviews post game. And it just felt so natural. It was just like, well, I know what I'm talking about, but, I know basketball and I love talking about it. And it was kind of like, it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so then I graduated, and I kind of took a weird turn. I would say 90%, I don't know, maybe 80% of people that want to get into news or sports news or sports broadcasting for that matter, go to a small market, let's say a Medford, kind of get going, figure out every aspect of it, and then move up to another market. And they're there for 2 years. And that works out for a lot of people. And I think it's a great path, because you learn every aspect. You're shooting your own stuff, you're running back to the studio, you're editing, or, back to the station you're editing. And then you have a quick turnaround. You got to it's great. You learn so much. And I completely recommend it. I, on the other hand, was so naive, and my parents are both in education. I knew no one in broadcasting at all. I had a friend that knew Angie Mentink, who has worked at Root Sports since she graduated from UW, played softball there and was a stud, and played softball professionally for a while. And they hired her. She's been there forever. And I had a friend who knew her, asked if I could meet her for, just appetizers and kind of pick her brain. So we met in Seattle. She was great. Talked with her forever. And I gave her my reel, and I said, I'd love to just start out, running coffee, whatever. I just want to get my foot in the door at Fox Sports Northwest, which is now Root Sports, which we are now on, which is so full circle. And she's like, you know what? Yes, I feel good about this. So she went and turned my reel in, or she went and looked at it. I'll get back to the end of that story, and then gave it to the EP. And this guy called me and the next day, he's like, would you be willing to like log tape and, put together highlights for our talent, like highlight, like a shot sheet. So like I would write the highlights and I'd edit them together, and then Angie would read them, during the segment. And so I did that for a year and a half, worked at an Italian restaurant to make sure I could pay rent for lunch. And then I'd run over to the station, log tapes, do all that. And then in the small off time I had, I would follow the actual anchors, actual reporters out into the field and do fake stand-ups. I would, bake cookies for the camera guys to take 5 minutes out of their time when they were done to shoot a fake stand-up, put all those together, go show my EP. He'd tell me, okay, you could do this better. You could do this. I'd go out for another 3 months, put it together again, go back, and just kept bugging him for a year and a half. Finally, he put me on UW volleyball sideline. That was my first live gig ever. It was Final Four, which was pretty exciting.
Wow.
And yeah, I did decent enough that they put me on football, basketball. That led to a Huskies magazine show, that led to a Running with the Pack magazine show, which was national with the Pac-10 when it was the Pac-10, and little things throughout there. Did some freelance work with in Portland with like Talking Ball, Rip City Live. And then took a job with the Indiana Pacers, which was my first stint in the NBA. I was there for 3 years, learned a ton. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And when I had the opportunity to come back home and cover, the team I grew up watching, it was just a dream come true. That's the short version. And the funny part of the story that I'm coming around to, I think you probably know this story because if you were listening to the podcast, I think I talked about it. The reel I gave Angie with all this stuff I had put together in college that she could look at and, show EP. About 5 years later, I've been on air for a couple of years, and Angie and I were just chatting about something. She's like, by the way, I've always been meaning to tell you. Remember when you gave me that reel when we met like 5 years ago? I was like, yeah. She's like, there was nothing on it. It was blank. I was like, what?
All that hard work.
I don't know what happened. I guess when I went to do like the copy, I don't know what happened. I'd like to blame someone else. I'm sure it was user error on my part, but I still got the job.
So it looks like we got Fawad. He finally joined us. He was a little busy.
Hi. I'm so sorry for being late. I just had a family issue I had to deal with.
No, I hope everything's okay. We're glad you're here.
I'm so thankful that you're here to join us. And yeah, I was with my grandfather. He's okay. He's doing better.
Good.
Just once again, we're so excited to have you on, and I'm sorry I couldn't be here earlier again, but I've just been looking forward to today for so long.
Oh, no, me too. Well, you know what? Before you got here, we were talking about family and how important it is. And I just went up to see my grandma, who we're lucky we have our grandparents, right? So
Mhm.
yes,
Very.
I completely understand. And you should be there to take care of your grandpa, as I was there to see my grandma. So glad you're here now, and glad we're all here together.
For sure.
So Fawad, I'm gonna let you, because you were the one that brought the original idea, the Heart Foundation. I know it's super big for Brooke, and since you were the one that kind of wanted to ask about it, I'll let you go with it.
Yeah, so obviously we've heard a lot about your work that you've done with your Heart Foundation and the program with the Blazers. So we just wanted you to talk about it a little bit more, like let other people know, the story behind it. I know it's pretty personal to you, so whatever you're comfortable sharing. We just love to hear more and just like continue to raise awareness for it.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. Every platform I can to talk about it, I love to talk about it just to get awareness out. So I appreciate it. Yeah, I know if you, for those who don't know, and every February for the last 3 years, we've been doing Brooke Hearts Your Heart Foundation. And I feel very comfortable talking about it because right before you got on here for a while, we were talking about the relationship that the fans and I have, which is a very special one to me. And so it feels just easy and welcoming to talk about personal stuff because I know that they have my back and they are supportive, just as I am just as supportive of them as a fan base. It's like back and forth, I think, with us. So I felt really like it was the right time to kind of focus on how I can make this tragedy into something positive. And it took a while to get there, but after a couple of years with the team and with the fan base, I'm like, this is the right time, the right people, the right organization, the right, right group of people that I feel totally comfortable talking about this. And I want to help all these people. Like if there's a way I can help one or two of them, gosh, that's all that matters. So yeah, I told my story about my husband, who was a professional athlete, perfect health. Played college football, played semi-pro football, played for the Giants for a little bit, and was still trying to get back into the league. So he was actively working out, like staying in professional shape, and ran all the time, lifted, ate very well, took very good care of himself. But on our honeymoon, after like 10 days after we got married, he had a heart attack on the treadmill in the hotel workout room and passed away in Florida, where we had planned on moving. We were doing a pseudo honeymoon there. So that happened 11 years ago. And it was totally shocking, not only because he was, again, in perfect health and 27 years old, but we had no idea that he had a carotid artery, had a heart issue, didn't run on his family. There was after the fact, we started thinking, like, were there signs that we missed, or like, how could this have happened? And there were a few that now I know to look for, which I had never even thought of because we never would have imagined he would have an issue like that, which is one, when he would run or do a lot of cardio, he would go through like 10 shirts. And I'm not even exaggerating. He brought like a stack of shirts to change into because he would profusely sweat. He'd be so tired after running. And I remember running with him, and I hate running, but he hated running more than anything. But he would do it, he would push himself and run further than he wanted to, and do all these things that were on his list of things he had to do for his workouts. And he would just be so overly exhausted by the cardio aspect. And I just, like me, I thought he just hated running, but later to find out that because of his heart issues, it was so consuming that, and so blocked, that he was putting in 10 times the effort that you or I would with a healthy heart. I mean, that's how much extra effort he had to put in just to make me run as fast or as long as someone with a normal heart, which would create excessive tiredness. So that was one of the things that I talked about. I think it was last year, that was kind of my focus, or 2 years ago, was listen to your body, make sure and be aware of the people in your family and your friends if you're noticing signs like that. And I'll tell you guys one story that it sticks out to me above all was one of my girlfriends from college sent my video with Lamar talking about this, exactly what I'm talking to you guys about, sent the video to her sister, who runs her own fitness studio, young, super in shape, obviously, does classes every day. And she sent it to her, and she's like, I just want you to watch this because I've wondered about this with you. I've kind of noticed these signs when you're working out and doing a lot of cardio. You seem to be more tired than you should. You're in perfect shape. So she watched the video, her sister did, and kind of got a little like, wow, this might be something. Went into a cardiologist and had to have emergency open heart surgery like the following week. And it saved her life. So that right there, gives me chills just to talk about. But so that was one, just listen to your body and listen to your heart. And also just ways to take care of yourself, get out and walk. Just And there's a lot of little things on the website too. If you go to AHA, Brooke Hearts Your Heart at the trailblazers.com. That was up during February because that's when we raise a lot of money. That's when we raise money, obviously it's Heart Month. So I would go to AHA where they have a ton of tools that will just get you thinking, because I think we take for granted heart health. I mean, it's the number one killer of women. And I didn't even know that until I started working with the AHA. So there's so many things you can learn and just to be aware of, because heart disease affects all of us, whether it's us in particular, our family, or close friends. I mean, I've had so many people come up to me just on the concourse and tell me stories about their family and what they've been through. And a lot of people saying, you know, I've changed some of my lifestyle decisions based on, you know, what I've learned from Brooke Hearts Your Heart, which is all I could ask for. So it's been a huge success. We've raised a ton of money for the Heart Association. It's been by far the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. And we're going to keep doing it every month moving forward. February, I'm just going to infiltrate you guys with heart information. So
Please do.
ready.
We'll welcome it. Yeah, I can't even imagine how that must have felt. And like, I completely get that whatever you can to help other people in that situation, like I can imagine how fulfilling that might be.
Mhm.
And, you know, I wish I could help in any way I can. You know, next February, I'll definitely be on the lookout and donate,
Oh, thank you.
you know, even a little bit of money.
Well, this right here is helping. You asking me about it is helping. So you just did.
That's true too. And I'm learning a lot just from talking to you as well.
Good. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, I
awareness.
learned a lot. I didn't know any. I mean, I only knew my personal story, and I learned a lot after that as we went through like what happened, and I every year when I'm sitting down with the AHA and kind of planning and with Annie, who runs the foundation through the Trailblazers, who, by the way, I have to give a shout out to our organization. Every year they match up to $5,000, which is unbelievable. So that's just like, thank you, Trailblazers, for that.
Yes.
But I learn so much every year. Every year we do this, I learn something new. So I think you can never stop learning. I mean, the first year we talked about AEDs and making sure those are in every possible place needed, and obviously how to use them. And so on Brooke Hearts Your Heart, we had step-by-step instructions on how to use an AED, and then also how to perform CPR. So that's another thing. If you're bored one day and you're scrolling through Twitter and you're like, gosh, I really have nothing to do, go check out how to use an AED or how to perform CPR. I mean, could you think of a better way to spend your time than doing something like that might actually save a life one day?
Yes, very much so. That's actually a really, like, a lot of times people spend their time on Twitter just scrolling away, and it's like,
oh, guilty here.
Trust me, I'm there too. TikTok right now. I got a problem with TikTok. But no, I totally agree. If to learn something that can save a life is much more important than just scrolling through and seeing random things. So like Fawad said, I appreciate you sharing that story. I know it's difficult, and I know you're proud of the foundation, and we're proud that you bring this to light and let everyone, learn from it. And so what was the website again? I just want to make sure we get that.
Well, it was Trailblazers, Brooke Hearts Your Heart, .com, but I want to make sure that it's still up, because it's very much up in February, but then they take it down because they have to get all the donors and all that stuff, because people were so wonderful. So I don't want to give you any misinformation. So I will, when we're done with this, I'll make sure to check, and then I'll send you a little note, and you can tell
fine.
your listeners. If
Totally
not,
fine.
then go to AHA, but that for sure, AHA.com has everything. I mean, under the sun. So that one's by far the best, but every February, BrookeHeartsYourHeart.com.
Got that. Okay. So obviously this is a Blazer podcast. It wouldn't be a Blazer podcast without at least talking about some current Blazer issues. So your last podcast, you had mentioned that you hadn't really decided what your feelings were for our seventh pick. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're in the NFL. Sorry. Do you have any opinions on it now, or are you still kind of in that same boat?
I'll say this. It was raw for me because I was just coming off the draft party with a bunch of my coworkers where we're all sitting around, Dame's, up there, and everyone's like, one of my coworkers, Heather, brought like a candle, like that is our good luck candle. And I put it on at Dr. Jack's. Like everyone had their certain things they had going on. And so we were all really into it and hoping it would be, of course, everyone's wishful thinking. Wouldn't it be great if like top 3, top 4? And I've since stepped it back and been more realistic. And 7 out of the top college players in the nation. I mean, that's great. That's great. If that's the worst case scenario, I'm okay with it. And we went, I mentioned it too. A bunch of people went back and started scrolling like number 7 picks in past drafts. There have been some pretty impressive guys that were drafted at number 7. So I am actually, I've took a step back and I'm excited about it, but I'm also excited to see if it will be used in a different way. If it's, if they use it with another team for a trade, I don't know. There's so many options that are unknown right now. And that's kind of what's exciting. Like I mentioned earlier, the unknown of this offseason, we have no idea. So it's just kind of like, what's going to happen today? So who knows what's going to happen with that pick, but I've come to terms with it and I'm excited about it. And I think, I don't want to say it could be worse. That doesn't sound positive, but it could be, it could be.
We've been guilty of saying that before. So
I think that we have a great team with our Joe Cronin and our new associate GMs you got Mike Schmidt, who comes in, who's like the king of scouting. And he is just a wealth of knowledge. He knows all these guys. If you go to his Twitter, he's already interviewed half of them. And so I think his mind will be very much used in this situation. Joe's been doing this since he was an intern. And these other guys coming in, I think there's so much intelligence and knowledge in terms of guys coming up in the system that I think that I have full faith in whatever they decide to do. If they decide to stick with number 7 or go a different route. I think it's a good thing. It was a little raw when I did that podcast because we were all so excited. Like, what do you think? 3, 4, 2, but 7's fine. 7's good.
We're not disappointed. We don't have to make the decision. So we just get to sit back and watch. Before we wrap up, I wanted to kind of just end it on a lot. We had, like I said, a lot of people that listened to us gave us a lot of questions.
Yes, I love that.
I took a couple of them. I just wanted to ask you a couple of them. They're kind of fun questions. So
I love fun.
First things first. Which shot to you was more impressive, more exciting? The Dame shot against Houston or the Dame shot against OKC?
See, I'm biased because I was at OKC. So I think I still would say, I really do think I still would say OKC. Let's pretend I was at neither or I was at both. I don't know. With everything everything that shot did, it completely an entire team. How many people can say they did that to an entire organization? And then I loved later, like an interview, Dame was like, that was for the Sonics. Oh gosh. Or that was for Seattle. That was like, gave me chills. But that whole scenario, I just remember I was standing there. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't working, of course, it was national. I was so mad. I was like, why does this have to be a national game? But I was there just watching. And I just remember standing there in the corner because I was in my seat and then I had to be down on the floor for the end of it. I just had to. And then you got Dame, who you just saw it, like when he got the ball, he was pumped coming down the floor. So you just got a defensive stop. And then you got Nurk over there. Oh gosh, it had everything. It had it had all the drama. And then after he shot it, his family's right there, his brother, his sister. And then they jump on him. And then everyone does. You got like Ennis runner, you got Mo. Just everyone's just like jumps on him, and then that one shot. And our guy, it was either, oh gosh, they're going to kill me. It was either Tristan or Justin Moulter. Tristan or Justin, one of you is going to be mad at me because I can't remember which one. One of our guys was the guy that caught on his own camera when Dame looked up and did the nod when he was laying in the dog pile, which that's one of my favorite shots of all time. So I just feel like that can't be beat, but I know that there will be like purists that were at that Houston game that will say that was the best. And I can't argue with you too. I think it's like choosing your favorite child, right?
Sure.
You can't go wrong, but I have to go with the one I was at.
No, I think, at least for me, I agree with you. Everything about that OKC shot was just how smooth he was after. And it still gives me chills to think about it. So
it was funny. I was at my cousin Ben's. He's actually a ER doctor here in Portland. He went to OHSU and he's a huge Blazers fan. That has nothing to do with the story, but he and his wife and their 1.5-year-old have a place in Happy Valley. They've just bought a home, and my dad and my son went over there on a couple nights ago for his birthday, 2 days ago for his birthday. And they have a really nice house, a big living room. And their son is just like mine. They love sports. He's only 1.5, but they have like the little soccer goals, and the basketball everywhere in the house. And Theo, that's my son's name, was playing my cousin Ben in soccer in the living room. and it was 4-4. And Theo had this crazy kick. I don't know if Ben let him, but I don't think he did actually. I think Theo actually did score. He scores on him, and it was to win the game. And no joke, without no prompting whatsoever, Theo turns around and does the Dane goodbye. He waved and walked out of the living room. I was like, that's my kid.
That's amazing.
It was awesome. I was like, no, you're not. He's like, just like stepped away and just waved at the crowd. I was like, I've never been more proud in my whole life. It was awesome.
Yeah, there's no wrong answer to either option, but the OKC one is just, you couldn't write something as good as that.
No.
It's 450 points, just everything about it.
So I have behind me, so if you guys can't see, did you guys show the video on your podcast or just the voices?
This will be on the video.
Okay.
Too.
So you see that this is my NBA city map that I had made, and every NBA city has a little platform. And so I get a shot glass from every city that I travel to. So it's all full, but I ordered one special because I love it so much. And it has to do with this story. So this one is for OKC, and I special ordered it, and it says bad shot on it.
I was actually
that is awesome.
I was watching another podcast you were on last year, and you talked about it on that one too. And I really wanted to ask you,
this is only the second time because I've only talked about it twice.
I really wanted to ask you about that over here as well, because I thought it was like just amazing.
It's pretty cool. I love it. It was just like, I wanted something because I've never bought a house before. And so I bought this very humble little rancher in Southwest Portland. And I'm not artsy. I don't know what is good art and what's not. I let my girlfriends do that kind of stuff and decorate for me because it's just not in my wheelhouse. But I wanted something that was cool, that was different, that was unique and kind of like one of a kind. And this guy was awesome. I had bought an outline of Oregon with the hoop on it. It's like a backboard of Oregon wood, and it's not really, you shouldn't probably be shooting on it, but it's more decor, but Theo still shoots on it. But I asked him, I was like, do you do anything like if I had an idea, could you make it? He's like, yeah, what do you got? I was like, I wanted something NBA related with the cities. And so we kind of just collaborated and came up with this, and he did an amazing job. And it's the only one there is, I think, that I know of, but everyone's like, what the heck is behind you?
It looks awesome to me. So
thank you. Thank you very much. It's fun.
Are there any other ones with cool stories, or is that?
Most of them I just get from like the Rite Aid down the street from the hotel. Not gonna lie.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. I got well, Chicago is a Jordan one because you got to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What else? Most of them are just like whatever their special thing in their city, and just like, I love Dallas or whatever.
Mhm.
But yeah, I love New York. I love Boston. Mostly they just show like whatever monuments or like the Golden Gate Bridge I have Alcatraz with a little prisoner like hanging over the side of it. But yeah, Oregon is the state of Oregon with the green heart, which I love. Yep. It's pretty interesting.
So let me give you two more questions before we get you out of here.
Okay.
I have a feeling one of these questions you kind of already asked. I'm going to assume your most memorable game was probably the OKC one.
That's up there. The 4 overtime with Rodney Hood.
Oh, that's a good one.
Was a good one, but it's still OKC for me.
The
So
4 overtime one is my personal favorite game of all time.
Which one?
The 4 overtime one, it's my personal favorite game of all time.
It's a close second. That one was wild. Oh, Rodney, who's cold, sitting on the bench, just gets in there, just bam, bam. I loved Rodney. I love Rodney so much. Just a sweetheart of a guy. And he was cold-blooded that night though.
Yeah. So do you have a funny team moment that you can share that maybe not many people know about?
The problem is I talk about everything all the time.
That's kind of how I thought.
I tell stories for a living, so I don't usually keep them to myself. You've probably already heard of them. Well, one of my favorite stories was and this happened a while ago, so maybe I don't think, maybe you've forgotten, or maybe it's just been a long time, so people might not remember. But I was at the practice facility in Tualatin, and I used to live downtown, like South Waterfront, and all the players, most of them live in Lake Oswego or Tiger, Tualatin, closer to the PF so that they can get in and out, which makes sense to me. And I live downtown, so I leave the PF. I'm driving down where you like get off on either left to go to Nadeau Parkway or go right to go up to Beaverton. And all of a sudden I'm looking, it wasn't usually it's kind of like crowded at that spot, but it was kind of, but not too much, but cars were still moving. I look up and there's a car like a block and a half in front of me, and I see it swerving, and all of a sudden I just hear, and there was a white van in front of the car. Something must have happened in front of that white van to make it swerve. It did a complete 180 and head-on collision with the car behind it, like a little Camry, and smoke's coming over. I mean, I watched it happen. I was like, geez. And so like I pull over off to the side because it was on the left lane, and the guy gets out of the white van. So he's okay. He's seemingly fine. I was like, are you all right? He's like, yeah, he was like, just kind of like, whoa, what just happened? He was fine. I look in, and there's a young woman in the front seat of the Camry, and the airbag has gone off. There's stuff everywhere. She is completely out of it, and she's coherent, but she's in shock. I was like, you're okay. Just don't move. It's going to be fine. I'm going to call 911. Just don't move. And she kept trying to get up, because I think that was just instinctual. Like she just kept trying to stand up and get out of the car. I was like, no, don't move. Just stay where you are. And so I'm on the phone with 911, trying to get them, trying to call someone to come. And the guy is kind of like standing there, but he's kind of out of it still too. And then, so I'm trying to, like, with one arm holding her down, like, stay in your car, and on 911 with my other hand. And all of a sudden I hear this voice behind me, like, can I help? What's going on? Can I help? And I turn around, and Evan Turner has pulled off in his Rolls Royce on the side of the road. He's like, I'm like, yes, ET, you can. Could you please come talk to her while I talk to 911? So he goes up, he's like, you're good, like telling her she's fine. And she was so insistent on getting out of the car. I was like, fine. Okay. But I was like, where do you hurt? And she was like, kind of pointing to her rib, but she could walk. And so I go, put her in your car, Evan. So he opens up the front seat of his Rolls Royce car. You get in all the little stars. I've never been in a Rolls Royce. They have little stars on the ceiling. Yep. The light comes down. That was new to me. So she's sitting there. I'm on the phone with 911. Finally, they show up. Then you got this van of kids that are leaving school or high school, and they're all leaning out the window. That's Evan Turner, and they're taking pictures. And this, all of a sudden, I become like some mama bear. I was like, no photos, no photos. I'm like in front of ET, like, what am I doing? Like, I'm on the phone with 911 going, no photos. I don't know why I did that. And so then they finally get there. They're taking care of it. ET's, we're taking like turns sitting with her to calm her down. And so ET's out talking to the paramedics at one point. I'm sitting in the Rolls with my first and only time I'll ever be on one, sitting next to her. And she's like, cool at this point. She's like, calm down. I'm like, can we call someone? And she's like, yeah, my dad. And as I'm ready to call, I go, do you know, do you see where you're at right now? She's like, kind of. I was like, you're in like a Blazers Rolls Royce right now. She's like, my dad loves the Blazers. I was like, well, let's tell him. So we call him, and I'm talking to her dad. I was like, and then I hand it to her. She's like, I'm in Evan Turner's car. And you can hear her dad's like, what? Anyways, it was the bizarre scenario that you could ever imagine. So ET gets in his car. I'm like, thank you, man. See you tomorrow at the game. And I get her information. And the next day, of course, well, then the local news catches on to it, and they did a whole story, and then they interviewed her, and we gave her tickets to the next game, her and her dad. And then I did an interview with ET pregame the next day to talk about it. And he's the funniest person, not even the funniest player I've ever met, like the funniest person I've ever met. And he's like, I got to give all the credit to you. I was just driving by, I'm like the only person in the city with a Rolls Royce. So I knew if Brooke looked over at saw me and drive by, I was like, hey, she'd be like, what an asshole. So he's pretty much admitted that. And the only reason he pulled over is because he knew I would recognize his car while driving by.
Oh, that is great. I've never heard that story. So
oh, really?
Great.
Oh, it was a long time. I think it was year 1 or year 2. It had to be year 2. Yeah, it was a long time ago, but yeah. And then ET and I went on to have a podcast, which I could tell you 9 million stories about. He had to be facing the door at all times, so that if someone came in, he could, he knew where all his exits were. He could drop, roll. So essentially I was in the line of fire every podcast, but he knew where he could escape.
He got it all planned out.
Yeah, he's great. I still talk to him every once in a while. He's a dad now. He's just focusing on being a dad, and he's a great one. So one of my favorite players of all time.
Okay.
Every ET story is just hilarious.
Every ET story. I mean, you talk to every sideline reporter or broadcaster that's ever covered him in Philly or wherever he's played. Everyone has a list of ET stories, and they're all organic. It's not like he goes out of his way to create these crazy. Remember when the semi truck fell in his pool?
Yeah.
I mean,
crazy.
How does that happen? Only ET.
So last question before we get you out of here. you can undo any Blazer injury at any era, any time. One injury. Who would it be?
Oh, goodness. Well, I mean, if you're asking me personally, like a short-term one, the Nurk one like shook me up for a long time, but I know that was temporary and he's back. So that one doesn't count. I mean, I would have loved to have seen what Greg Oden could have done. I mean, what could have been, but I honestly, if I say that, but then at the same time, I know what Brandon Roy did. So it's kind of like, do I want to know what could have been with Greg, which I think that, I mean, we saw him play obviously in college, a very good player, but we saw what Brandon Roy is capable of in the league. So that one's almost harder.
Yeah.
That one's almost harder. I actually kind of think I need to say B. Roy.
That's what I would say as well, actually.
By the way, I did trivia the other night with my mom, Rain Brain Trivia, shout out. And the final question, which was worth the most points. The rest of them were like geography. We didn't get any of those. But the last one was sports. And it was, other than Damian Lillard, the most recent two Blazers that were all-stars. And obviously we knew LaMarcus right away. And then I was like, I'm pretty sure it's B. Roy. And then we heard the other table. They're like, oh, it was she. And the mom was like, she didn't care about that stuff. I was like, that's true. That's true. And so, yeah, we had B. Roy. We were the only two that got it in the whole thing.
I love it.
We were the only two. We still didn't win the whole thing, but we were just proud of that one category.
You didn't win the whole thing?
No, just
you have the geography of the United States behind you, and you
I know.
Win.
It was world geography. It was
okay. That's fair. I wouldn't know half the answers either then.
Oh, it's funny. One of them was like Florence and the Machine's most recent album title. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Nope. Not me.
No, but it was still fun. I was just proud of getting the Brandon Roy one right.
Hey, that's all that matters.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Do you have anything you want to add, Fuad, before we let her go?
No, I think that's all the questions. But I just want to thank you again. Like your presence on TV and everything makes the game so much more exciting to watch. And it's just, even when it's a down season like this year, like tuning in to watch, you and Kevin and Lamar, like the whole crew is just, it's wholesome. It's enjoyable to watch. I appreciate all of you, and your friendship with Amara online is always something fun to watch as well on social media.
That girl is my heart, man. She is. Thank you for saying that. It's nice to see that you guys can, through the TV, feel like that our true like friendships and relationships. Because Kevin and I go way back. He was the first college football game I ever did at Washington State. He was play-by-play, and I was sideline, and I was so nervous just to be my first college football sideline outside of doing the Huskies. I'd done that. This was my first national one. And then I come to find out that Kevin Calabro is my play-by-play. Oh my gosh. It's like, is this real life? And who would have guessed that he would end up being my lifelong colleague and we'd become so close. It's been a dream come true. And Lamar is just the sweetest, nicest, funniest dude in the world. And Amara is my BFF. So yeah, I'm very lucky. And I'm glad that comes through and you guys can see that because it's very sincere and very genuine.
Well,
yeah, your chemistry is through the roof. It definitely comes across.
Good. I'm glad.
For sure. Like I said a little bit earlier, you were without a doubt my favorite sideline reporter, halftime reporter, everything. Like I just enjoy every time you're on. Every time I get a video on Facebook with you talking with the players, it's like I do watch them. So
thank you.
Once again, though, I appreciate you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, talk with us. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we let you go?
Let's see. No, just I get excited. I want to give a nice pat on the back to our fans. And I know I've been talking about them a lot, but why not? During this season, obviously there was some downtime, some unfortunate situations, but I got to say, I was super impressed with the continued support. Our fans are so educated, so in the know, they know everything. They know the ins and outs of everything. And even though the main players were not playing towards the end of the season, I loved the support that the fans showed. Greg Brown, Trendon Watford, Josh Hart until he sat, and they were all in on whoever was playing. And that's just the kind of fan base that you guys are, where we're here to support the team no matter who's on the floor. And then you jump on these fun storylines with these young guys, and you want to know more about them. And then towards the end, I started doing one-on-ones with the assistant coaches, so you guys could get to know them better. Because it really wasn't about the matchup towards the end of the year. It was more about let's use this time to get to know these guys and get to know what the goals are in the future. And so I just loved the fans showed up. I mean, the last couple of games, it was packed, and I loved that. And I know the last game was a lot to do with maybe like Sean Lee's farewell, which which was fantastic.
Mhm.
It was just his 94th, it was his 93rd birthday. His 93rd birthday he just
Yeah.
had, which is unbelievable. But I just want to give a huge kudos to you guys for continuing your support, even through the down times, the rough times. And I just can't wait to see what happens next year. And I think it's going to be worth the wait.
Totally agree. Once again, Brooke, seriously, thank you for joining us. I can't even explain how excited we were when we saw that you were like, yeah, I'll do it. We were so excited. So thank you once again.
Of course, I'm glad it worked
Thank you
out.
so
Thank you
much.
for having me. Let's do it again sometime.
I love it. All right,
We'd love
everybody
to.
that's listening, thank you for listening. And as always, Rip City, baby.